Welcome to the Defeat the Drama podcast, where you'll learn tips, tricks, and strategies to help you gain clarity, find purpose, live boldly, and defeat the drama in leadership and life. Host Kirsten E. Ross is known to many as the drama-free queen. She is the undisputed expert of transformation. She'll move you from resigned, resentful, and overwhelmed to focused, engaged, and empowered.
Welcome to the Defeat the Drama podcast. I'm Kirsten Ross, your host, and this is episode number 28. First, I just want to take a quick minute to say thank you so much for joining me. I know you are super busy. So thank you. I'm on a mission. As you know, drama zaps energy and steals focus. So it is time to defeat the drama now. So in today's episode, I'm going to give you the 5 keys to a life of healthy boundaries. So this episode is tools to use in leadership and life. So we need healthy boundaries everywhere. I often tell my clients that you are who you are in your life and in your work. And if we work in one area, we will impact both. So while most of the time we think about using healthy boundaries in our life, these concepts can be used in life or work. So these are the right tools for the job. So do you ever stop and think what you want, need, or desire from your relationships? Do you ever ask yourself this question? Boundaries really are just rules of engagement for your relationship. And I'm using the term relationship very loosely. I mean, don't just think about your close family members or your spouse or significant other. I mean, a relationship, really, you're in a relationship with someone when you're talking to them in a grocery store or when you're fighting over produce. So really anything, we have a relationship with someone while we're a customer inside of a business and with our employees or with our team or with our boss. So we are in relationship constantly. And so it's really about having nice, healthy boundaries with all of our interactions with other people. So if you're the one doing all the modifying and all the sucking it up without speaking up, you're probably building up resentments with the people in your work and your life. You'll also tend to attract people who don't like to respect boundaries. And, I must admit, I am a reformed people pleaser. It's been years and years. I mean, probably over 20 years, but there were lessons I had to learn, and I have different kinds of people in my life now. So, and I work with clients who are often struggling and have a lot of people in their life who aren't really big fans of someone setting boundaries. And that's just, all of our relationships, picture a puzzle, and each individual in your life is a piece of a puzzle. And how you fit together, we all fit together like pieces of puzzle. So you and a significant other, your boss, your coworkers, each of you fits in a certain way. And if you're a person who's not good at setting boundaries, the people in your life are going to tend to be the kind of people. So I call them, there's people pushers and people pleasers. And so if you're a person who doesn't set healthy boundaries, you're a people pleaser, and then you probably have a lot of people pushers in your life. Those people who just don't want to respect boundaries, might throw a little hissy fit if you say no, or I'm sorry, I can't help right now. And then if you're a people pleaser, you feel bad. And so you accommodate their needs and you take care of them. So you tend to fit like a puzzle piece with people pushers if you're not setting healthy boundaries. You want to say in how all of your relationships work. So it's really important to think about what kind of relationships do I want? And like I said, I used to have people pushers in my life. And really, as I've become more of a healthy boundary setter, I mostly have people who set and respect healthy boundaries. And I've got to say, it's a pretty nice way to live. It's not like my life is perfect, but I really appreciate the people in my life who respect boundaries and set boundaries. We always know where we stand, so it's really nice. So people who are more passive in life, in particular, often forget to put themselves into the equation of their relationship. So often I'll be working with a client and I'll say, how do you feel about that? And sometimes they don't even understand the question. And so if you've been a person who hasn't really thought about, what do I want? What are my needs and wants and desires out of my relationships? And what do I want out of life? Or how do I want to spend my time? Or how do I feel called to spend my time? If we have all the other people around us dictating our time out of their wants and needs, we don't have time for our calling, for ourselves. So they become so focused on meeting the other person's needs or fixing their next catastrophe that they forget to even consider their own feelings, wants, or needs. So this might be you. So I'm going to cover, it's a tough way to live. So I'm going to cover the 5 keys to living a life of healthy boundaries. And they all happen to start with C, which is cool. So like the K sound. So the first one is create. So the first thing you have to do is create the boundary. So if you had your way, what variables would you like to change in your relationship? Whether it's work or life, it's time to take an inventory. So what are the things that are working in your relationships and what are the things that aren't? And again, sometimes we've lost track of even thinking about what we want or how we feel about our relationships. Where do you have resentments building up? Where should you be saying no or I can't right now? So here's some common places to look. So making a request to have people in your life respect your time. Do you have any of those people who are just constantly late because their time they feel is more important? So you might ask them to be on time or let you know ahead of time that they'll be late. That would be a concept. Another one that I see a lot of times is give me more notice. So if you've become the go-to guy or the go-to gal in your work or in your life, people, you've heard this, but we teach people how to treat us. And so we become the person who people say like, oh, I can rely on them. It is great. But what they do is they wait until the last second because they know no matter what, whatever catastrophe or how late in the game they come to you to help them fix their problem, you're going to jump to it and help them. So maybe there's an area in your life where you need to ask people, make a request of people to give you more notice. If you're tired of putting out fires for a person who's constantly coming to you last minute to help with a project or fill out a form, maybe it's your child. Hey, Mom, I need this filled out or I need poster board for my project. Or a coworker. Stop and think what you need in this area. Another place you might want to create some boundaries is watch your tone. So are there people in your life who are speaking loudly or too fast or getting in your personal space or they're being sarcastic or condescending? So whether it's a sarcasm or a condescending attitude or a too loud volume, teach people how you would like to be spoken to. So maybe there are areas where you want to create boundaries around the tone. Now, I have 2 teenage boys, and I can tell you there are times when I have to just say, whoa, stop, change the tone, please. So that's when I definitely have to employ these days. Not too often, but definitely. So, and how about behave appropriately? So is there a coworker telling off-color jokes or a colleague drinking too much at a company picnic? Or maybe it's a family member during your holiday celebrations. Who is it that's not behaving appropriately for the situation? Again, most of the time I'm coaching people in their work, but I end up impacting their work and their life. And I remember years ago, a client was like, the holidays are coming. I'm not looking forward to it. And of course I'm like, what's going on? And, really it was, they had a family member who didn't act appropriately and it was Thanksgiving that was coming up and, he would drink too much and he would be too loud. And so everyone talked about it, the behavior, but no one talked to him. And so he had never had the opportunity to make the right choices. So the family as a whole had never created boundaries for him and just said, hey, we really want you there. We love you. But here's the rules of engagement. And actually that was a great success story because what happened is they ended up as a family having a meeting with him and said, we want you there, but here's, how it's going to go down. These are the rules. And he followed them. He was, he made an informed decision. Before that, everyone was talking about him instead of to him. So those are just a few areas to kind of poke around and see where it might be time to create some boundaries in your relationships. Again, work or life. And just think about frustrations where you feel overwhelmed, resentment towards anyone. I try to make a rule for myself that I'm not going to be angry with anyone unless I've told them and given them the opportunity to make a different choice. So why waste energy being frustrated with someone when they don't even know what they're doing? So look for those areas where you're frustrated or resentful. Okay, number 2, consequence is key. So it's just human nature. We need a catalyst to generate change. It's just the reality of things. So while in some of your relationships, the fact that you've taken the time to share your feelings will ignite a positive reaction, in many instances, the people in your life will need a bit more motivation to heed your request. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. So if they don't comply with your request, what will you do? The consequence, try to have it be related to the boundary. So let's go back through our original list and kind of think about some consequences. So if your boundary that you need to set is respect my time. So maybe you have someone who's habitually late for a meeting or a business lunch. So you could tell them, I will wait 5 minutes and then start without you. Or I'll wait 5 minutes and then I'm going to leave. Or 20 minutes or 15 minutes. The time frame's whatever you want. But so you're setting the boundary and then you're having a consequence so that there's a negative consequence for them. Because if you just set the boundary and there's no negative consequence, chances are they're going to just keep doing it. The next one, give me more notice. So maybe you'll say to a coworker or your child, if you give me less than 2 days notice, I will not be able to help you. So you start to teach them, or unless it's an emergency, or to your child, unless you actually did get the paperwork last minute, I need you to get it to me ASAP. Okay, watch your tone of voice. So you might say to someone, if you continue with a sarcastic tone, I will end the conversation. Maybe you're on a phone call. Maybe it's a parent and they get agitated and loud. And so you might tell them, I love talking to you. I love our conversations. You have great input for me. But when you start being frustrated and getting too loud, it's really uncomfortable for me. And so if that happens, I'm going to give you a warning and just tell you that I'm feeling uncomfortable. And if you don't quiet down, I'm going to have to hang up. So you tell them in advance so they can make an informed decision. Then behave appropriately. I need you to do X, or I will ask you to leave, or you will not be invited back, or you will be terminated, or you will be taken off the project. So what's the negative consequence that you can create? So you create the boundary, and then consequence is key. And then the next one is communicate the boundary and consequence. So you have to communicate it. So creating a boundary and a consequence doesn't help if you don't communicate them to the affected party. So you have to give them the opportunity to make the right choices. I said that before. So they don't even know maybe that you're frustrated. So too often we sit in silence as we build up resentments. I recommend communicating it as a request. So you can't demand that someone do anything differently from what they normally would. You can only share your feelings and ask. Sometimes we do try to demand, but really that just sets up kind of a more defensive conversation. So calling it a request and asking puts you in more of a relaxed mode. So your nonverbal communication will portray the same. So your friend or colleague will feel more freedom to say yes or no. Ultimately, either way, they have the final say, whether you demand it or request it. So you might as well keep it low key and request. Then outline the consequence so that they're making an informed decision. Give them the opportunity to make a different choice. And sometimes it's hard to act on the consequence you've outlined, but don't give yourself an out by failing to communicate it. I see that one too often. Well, I didn't really tell them that I'd leave if they were more than 15 minutes late. I'd feel bad leaving without telling them. I hear that one too late. You might tell someone, it's really hard for me when you're late all the time, but you forget to tell them the consequence. And so then you feel bad following through on the consequence because you didn't give them the warning. So just communicate the whole thing. Just get it out of the way. And then you have the final say in acting out the consequence. It's okay if they continue to offend. You have the opportunity to enact the consequence that you forewarned them about. they've been given notice and they've had the chance to comply. So just follow through, be a person of your word. And and the thing is, if you set these boundaries and then you say the consequences and you don't follow through, it's going to be harder for them to believe you the next time. So just follow through, especially if parenting. I mean, I've already shared a story about my boys with my jaw-dropping experience of taking them to the Burger King play place. I never once had to go up there and retrieve a child. And now that they're in their teens, I think I'm fully out of the way. I think I'm good to go. It's not going to happen. Maybe someday when I have grandchildren or something, but I was able to do that because I set boundaries with them, clear expectations with consequences, and they knew that I was a mom who would follow through. So number 4, consider. So you're going to set the boundary, have the consequence, communicate both, and then consider. So, my goal isn't to turn you into a dictator. So if the person that you're talking to is open to engaging in a healthy conversation, listen to your colleague, friend, or family member. Are they willing to acknowledge their behavior and apologize? Are they understanding of your need to set boundaries and consequences? Are they able to hear and appreciate your point of view? Is it possibly a case where they just totally misread the situation and had no idea that they were offending you or taking advantage? If this is the first time you've ever spoken up to someone, it's a possibility. So do they have an alternative idea for how to hold them accountable or how to work with you? I once had a colleague share a story, this was years ago, about her frustration about her neighbor who constantly asked her to babysit. So she would just, every once in a while, she would just say, "Oh my gosh, she asked me again. Oh my gosh, that little girl was over again." So finally I said, "What are you saying to your neighbor?" Well, lo and behold, she always told the neighbor that she loved babysitting. So from her neighbor's perspective, the neighbor had the best situation ever. She had a neighbor who loved watching her little girl. And so she thought she was like win-win, I need a babysitter. You love spending time with my adorable daughter. And, this is awesome. So she kept asking. This colleague kept saying yes. She was building up resentment and frustration, but the neighbor had no idea because she was communicating the exact opposite. So, and in that instance, she finally did say something and it was fine. And she considered, they had a nice conversation and considered what the neighbor was saying, and they had a good conversation. So number 5, carry out the consequence. So follow through on your word. I already said this, but make the request, share the consequence. And if they don't comply, you have to follow through. It will probably be hard, but you must. So tell them what you'll do. Remember, this isn't about punishing. It's about protecting yourself. So you're not being punitive. That's not your goal. It's how to make your own relationships palatable, how to, maintain your sanity in dealing with people. So where are you building up resentments? Where do you need to set some boundaries? If you're going to sit there and wait for someone who's, notoriously 50 minutes late for a meeting or a lunch, and you're just going to sit there and get madder and madder and madder, if you set the boundary and then don't leave, you're going to continue to be frustrated. So carry out the consequence. Set the consequence that you'll wait no more than 10 minutes, and then you're moving on without them, and then leave without them once that you may see a sudden and dramatic change. So the thing is, again, remember, we're all like puzzle pieces. And so if you make a change, they will too. You don't know exactly what the change will be, but they will make a change. And you might go through a little journey of multiple changes, but in the end, usually those puzzle pieces lock together nicely if you stick to your guns. So continue to accommodate the offensive behavior, and they'll have no reason to change. So your puzzle piece will continue to fit the way it always has. There's no transformation. So I'm going to recap them really quickly. And again, these are all in the show notes. If you go to defeatthedrama.com, click on the podcast site link, and then find this episode, number 28, and you'll find all these, the 5 keys listed for you. So the first one is create the boundary. So stop and think about where you have resentments or overwhelm or frustration in your relationships. Poke around about, people respecting your time. They need to give you more notice. Watch the tone of voice, those kinds of things. So think about where you need to set some boundaries, come up with the boundary, and then the consequence. Consequence is key because humans need a catalyst for change. Number 3 is communicate the boundary and the consequence. You can't just create them and think that they're going to, through osmosis decide to, behave the way you want them to. You have to tell them, give them the opportunity to make the right choice. No need to be angry if you're not speaking up. 4, consider if they're ready to have an open and healthy conversation and maybe negotiate with you a little bit about, well, here's what I was thinking. What would you think about this? Listen, hey, that's really ultimately what healthy boundaries are about, is generating great communication and healthy relationships. So if someone's willing to engage and own it and hear your perspective, go ahead and have that conversation and consider their point of view. 5, carry out the consequence. So once you've said it and had a meeting of the minds, and if they continue the behavior, follow through. All right, that's it. The 5 keys of generating a life with healthy boundaries. I hope this helps. So let me give you my 3 S's. If you haven't already, subscribe to this podcast. Number 2, submit a review. Reviews are awesome and so appreciated, and they help other people find this podcast more easily. And then 3 is join me in this mission. So come and tell other people. Tell them through social media, so share it. Share it through your social media, through email, through old-fashioned talking to them on the phone, because I'm on a mission to defeat drama. It's time. There's too much in this world. So until next time, make it a great day.